Hi everyone, it's Miss Terry, and today I'm going to talk about my October picks for grade 4. We'll talk about some fiction, then we'll talk about some graphic novels, and then some nonfiction. I do have Halloween in mind as I was picking books this month, so hopefully you'll find some spooky stories to entertain you. This first one is called Scritch Scratch by Lindsay Curry, and this is about a girl named Claire who's she's very science-minded. She doesn't believe in things that are kind of fantastical, but her dad does. Her dad is convinced that spirits and ghosts are real, and he ends up quitting his job to run a ghost tour bus in Chicago. And Claire is just kind of like, oh, Dad, how could you do this to us? Until one day she discovers the ghost of a young boy at the back of the bus, and she realizes that maybe her dad is right. Maybe there are a few more things true in the world, and she ends up making some new friends as she tries to discover the mystery of the boy at the back of the bus. You can kind of see him there in the light. This is definitely a bit on the creepy side. This next one is called A Small Zombie Problem, and this one is not a new one, but the second one just came out, The Zombie Stone, so I thought I'd bring them both out to tell you a little bit more about them. And this is about a boy named August who has lived in kind of this old house with his old aunt his whole life. In fact, he's never even stepped foot out of the house. He's never been allowed to. His aunt has a lot of very strict rules, and he really just wants to be a normal boy. Well, one day he ends up getting invited to tea by another aunt that he didn't even know existed, and she asks him to find her brother's long lost zombie stone, and if he can do that, then she will allow him to go to school with his cousins. Well, August is like, heck yeah, that's what I really want, is to go to school. And he ends up taking on the task of finding the zombie stone, but it doesn't take too long before some of the undead start following him around, and he realizes that there's more to his family history than he originally thought. So this is called A Small Zombie Problem. I mean, it is about zombies, so it is a little bit creepy that way, but it's a little bit more on the humorous side and mystery. These next two are definitely scarier than Goosebumps, so if you think Goosebumps are a little scary, then these probably aren't for you. The first one is called Scare Me, and then the next is called The Collector. And these are both by K.R. Alexander, who writes a lot of horror fiction for young adults. And Scare Me is the story about I lost my note. About a town called Happy Hills. I have a couple copies of this one. And in Happy Hills, they always have this haunted mansion contest where the kids of the town get to come to the spooky manor and try to think up different ways in different rooms to scare different people. Unfortunately, this year, the house has awakened and it doesn't want anybody to leave the house until it's devoured them all. And now they have to try to figure out if they can escape and get away. This is called Scare Me. And then this one is called The Collector, and this is about a girl named Jessie, and her family have just moved in with her grandmother, who lives in kind of this little bit of a creepy town, and her grandma has some very strict rules. I'm going to tell you what they are. Number 1, never leave your windows open after dark. Number 2, no dolls in the house. And number 3, never ever go by the house in the woods. Well, Jessie ends up making a new friend at school named Vanessa, who lives kind of on the edge of the woods. And at their first sleepover, yep, you guessed it, Vanessa takes Jessie into the woods and closer to the house that Grandma says don't go to. I mean, it's got a doll on the cover. How much creepier can you get? That's called The Collector. And then I also have number 2 in this series called The Collected. More creepy dolls. This next one is called Molly and the Twin Towers, and this is a part of the Girls Survive series, which if you like the I Survived series, then you might enjoy this. And this one is about a girl named Molly who lives in Manhattan with her dads, and takes place on the day that 9/11 happens. And her one dad is a pilot and her other dad can't be reached, and her grandmother is actually an EMT for the firefighters of New York City, and she's down at ground zero. So it's up to Molly to grab her sister Adeline and see if they can make it home, and in the hopes of reuniting with her family. So that's Molly and the Twin Towers. How to Be Brave is a story of a girl named Calla North, whose mom is really the premier expert on ducks, which seems like an interesting job, but it doesn't make a lot of money. So when her mom gets this opportunity to go to another continent actually and study ducks there, she can't pass it up because they really need the money. So she ends up sending Calla to her old boarding school, which is run by the Good Sisters, which is a group of nuns who are not your typical ordinary nuns. And they believe in a good education, but they also believe in preparing women for anything that could come up, including like how to make the perfect batch of brownies and also how to repair a helicopter if need be. Unfortunately, there's a new headmistress actually, who wants to change curriculum kind of back to the boring old, you know, just the basics, and the students and nuns are not happy at all. And then Calla's mom goes missing, and she knows that it's up to her to see if she can find out what happened to her mom and possibly rescue her. And she takes some of her friends from school and a couple nuns along with her. So it's called How to Be Brave. Cinders and Sparks, Magic at Midnight is a kind of a twist on the Cinderella theme. And this takes place in a world where Sparks is a talking dog and Cinder is actually the one who has magic, not her fairy godmother Brian, but Cinder herself. And it takes her a little bit to get used to getting her magic to work the way she wants. It kind of starts out simple where she makes a couple wishes and those wishes come true, like her dog being able to talk. She does end up going to the ball and meeting the prince, but what she doesn't realize is that the royal family is deathly afraid of fairies because of something that happened way long time ago, and they want to banish all fairies from the kingdom. This is the first in what looks like is going to be a series. This next one is called Rescue at Lake Wild, and this is the story about a girl named Maddie whose parents have said, you may not bring home even one more stray animal or you're not going to get to go and meet your idol, Jane Goodall, who happens to be coming to her town to a convention. And Maddie's trying very hard to follow her parents' rules, but then she discovers 2 beaver kits that have been abandoned, or actually their parents have been killed. And she knows that she needs to rescue them. So she decides to hide them in a secret place, and you can imagine how well that's gonna go. And she also discovers that somebody is hunting beavers in her area, and she's trying to track down who that is to find out why they would want to do that to the population and how she can save the other beavers. So that's Rescue at Lake Wild. If you like books like Flush and things like that, you probably will enjoy this one. This next one is a book about animals, and the animals are the main character. This is the first in the Chicken Squad series. I'm bringing it out. It's not super new, but there's a whole bunch of new ones that have just recently come out in this series. And this is about a group of chickens, Dirt, Sugar, Poppy, and Sweetie. And they are little chicks, and they're not your typical ordinary chicks. They like to solve mysteries, and now they have a terrified squirrel in their coop who is afraid of the big scary something that's outside, and the chicks have decided that they're going to find out what it is and see if they can get rid of it. So this is called the Chicken Squad. Definitely on the silly side. This next one is called The Sisters of Stray Garden Place. And this is about 3 sisters, Mayhap, Winnow, and Pavanine, who have always lived in their home. Unfortunately, their parents have left and didn't come back. But they have always been told by their parents, you know, don't leave the house, do not go into the grass, wait for us, and sleep darkly. So there's these creatures in the house called droomhuns that help the sisters fall asleep and kind of clear their minds in order for them to settle, because the grass outside the gates is always whispering to them, trying to get them to come outside and to come play in the grass. But they've been told, don't do that, don't do that. Unfortunately, Winnow, the youngest, doesn't listen and ends up going out into the grass and returns not quite the same. Definitely on the creepy side, The Sisters of Stray Garden Place. And then here is the newest in the Geronimo Stilton book series. This one is called Garbage Dump Disaster, and Geronimo is back at solving mysteries with his friend Hercule, who stinks to high heaven, woohoo, because it turns out that all of the trash in town is being stolen by an evil rat, and it's up to Geronimo and Hercule to try to find out what the rats are doing, where they're taking the garbage before all of the good trash is gone. And then I have 2 choose your own adventures, both a little bit on the scary side. This one is called Can You Capture the Chupacabra, which is a mythical creature that was said to roam around Puerto Rico and likes to drink the blood of animals and maybe even people. So this book is choose your own adventures. It has 37 choices and 16 different endings, and you can see if you are smart enough to track down this creature, if it even exists. And then I also have Can You Net the Loch Ness Monster? And the Loch Ness Monster has been seen not just in Scotland, but in other countries as well, and you can try to determine if you can find it. Okay. All right, let's talk about some graphic novels. This first one is called Katie the Cat Sitter, and this is about a girl named Katie who gets asked to cat sit for her neighbor who lives upstairs, who has 217 cats. And Katie would love to do this because she loves cats, but she all of a sudden realizes that every time the supervillain in their town named the Mousestress strikes and causes crime is always at the same time as when her neighbor asks her to cat sit. And now she's thinking, could my neighbor be the supervillain that we're all looking for? So it's a little bit of mystery, a little bit of superhero. That's Katie the Cat Sitter. Monster Friends is a silly book about two friends who couldn't be more different. One is young, one is old, one is curious, one is not, one is always bored, one is happy, one is sad. This is Reggie and Emily, and Emily is determined not to let Reggie ruin her day because after all, they have a map to make, a beach party to plan, and a sea monster to capture. It's called Monster Friends. The Accursed Vampire is about a vampire named Dragoslava who's been cursed by a witch a long time ago, and he has to do anything that the witch tells him to do. So if she says, you need to go get this for me, he has to go do it. He can't even deny it. And now the witch has asked him to go into a human town to track down a spell book that she wants. And so he and a couple of his immortal friends decide that they're going to try to break the curse that has kept him tied to this witch. Again, this is a graphic novel, so it's written in comic book format. Allergic is a story of a girl named Maggie, and Maggie is kind of feeling left out. Her parents are kind of preparing for a new baby. She has twin brothers who just, they always hang out together. They kind of seem to know each other's minds, and she always just kind of feels left out. So she's decided that she'd really like to get a pet, and what she'd really like is a dog. But as you can see on her skin, turns out she's allergic to everything with fur, anything that has fur, really. And now it's up to Maggie to see if she can track down what could possibly be a better pet for her. It's called Allergic. Superdweeb and the Pencil of Destiny is about a boy named Andy who, let's face it, he's kind of dweeby. He doesn't have tons of friends, and he's always kind of making mistakes. And then one day he finds this glowing pencil, and he realizes that he can redraw reality however he'd like. He can make new exciting things happen or erase past mistakes. And things are going along really great. He's even got a girl kind of interested in what he's doing until his younger brother Oscar finds his pencil and draws something that he unleashes on the town, and it's up to Andy to get it back. So that's Superdweeb and the Pencil of Destiny. Definitely on the silly side. This next one is called Kyle's Little Sister, and this is a story about a girl named Grace who is sick and tired of living in the shadow of her very popular, very athletic, very handsome older brother Kyle, and she's just really struggling to find her own place in this school that she's now going to with her brother when everybody seems to be more interested in him than they are in her. It's called Kyle's Little Sister. And then the last graphic novel today is called Metropolis Grove, and this takes place in a town where nobody believes in Superman. They don't believe that Superman exists. Well, Sonia Patel has just moved to the town, and she's seen Superman with her own eyes in the big city, and she's determined to convince her new friends Duncan and Alex that Superman is real. So it's called Metropolis Grove. All right, let's talk about some of the nonfiction. This first one is called Who's the GOAT? That's the greatest of all time. And this book in this series is focuses on soccer. So it's looking at Ronaldo versus Messi versus Beckham versus Pele. And it compares all of their soccer statistics to see if they can determine who was the greatest of all time. If you're a sports fan, you definitely want to enjoy that. This next one is called History Smashers, written in a very graphic format. And this one is, in particular, is about the Titanic. So it really looks about all of the history behind the Titanic and the things that everybody has passed down as truth and whether or not they actually are. So think of it kind of as the fact checker of history as they tell you what really happened in the days leading up to the sinking of the Titanic and the Titanic itself and the aftermath. This next one is a new biography. It's called The Story of Simone Biles, who is an Olympic gold gymnast. If you have seen her in the Olympics this year, you might be interested in reading more about her story. I have 2 different books in the Roblox series. This one is using Robux in Roblox, and this one is characters in Roblox. So if you're a huge Roblox fan and you'd like some tips and tricks on how to be a better player, or if you just want more information about the game, this is a good series for you to check out. And then 2 in the National Geographic Kids series, I have Pounce and Fetch. And each one of these focuses on our favorite furry friends. This one in particular is a training guide on how to talk to your cat, and this one is a training guide on how to talk to your dog. So if you have a dog or a cat or both, you might be interested in some different ways to teach them some new tricks, as well as maybe try to understand what they are trying to tell you. An easy drawing book. This one is called Easy to Draw Trucks Step by Step. Very typical of most drawing books. See if I can turn the page. Where it gives you the step-by-step instructions on how to draw your favorite truck vehicles. This next one is a new book of poetry. It's called The Book of Not Entirely Useful Advice, Spectacular Silly Poems of A.F. Harold. If you're a big fan of Where the Sidewalk Ends, or if you just like to read silly poetry, you will enjoy this book. Here's one, it's called The Perils of Breakfast, and you can see what's coming out of the cornflakes. I also have, if you're interested in Fortnite, this one is the definitive guide to Fortnite, and this is the 2020 version. If you're looking for a little bit of a true ghost story, this one is called The Green Briar Ghost, and it is about Elva Zana Hester Shue, who died in Greenbrier County, West Virginia in January of 1897. And originally they thought her death was an accident, but it turns out that she was murdered, and she came back from the dead to point out to her mother who her murderer was. Now, this is in the nonfiction category, but it's up to you to decide if these things actually happened. And then the last one I have today is called Crafting Calm. And these are art and activities for mindful kids. So if you're just looking for some fun things to do at home, where you're interested in just slowing things down, using all your senses, being calm and mindful, this has some different things that you can do. Like, for example, create an emotional support plant. You can see the cute little cactuses in here. So it has just different activities and ways to remain calm. Enjoy!